Okay, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ali Milani. I'm a councillor in Heathrow Villages, and I'm also an executive member of the Labour Muslim Network. Thank you guys so much for joining our event today, which is on Muslims in local government. We've got some really exciting, fantastic speakers today that I can't wait to hear from, and I'm sure you can't wait to hear from as well. So I'm going to try and spend as little time me talking and as most time you hearing from the speakers as possible. But I did want to kind of introduce the topic as to why we have chosen this specific topic today and why we think it's so important that we hear from these speakers. As we speak, there are something north of 400, 500 Muslim local councillors all across the country, serving their local communities, their wards, and their councils as a whole. And that's an incredible achievement and accomplishment and contribution by the British Muslim community to local residents, local constituencies, and local communities. And one of the things we wanted to do was highlight this work and be able to celebrate the contribution of some of the amazing Muslim councillors across the UK. And that's why we've put together such an exciting panel for you to hear from. The Labour Muslim Network launched the Muslim Councillor Network not long ago. And so this project is aiming to bring together the Muslim councillors from all across the country under the umbrella of the Labour Muslim Network to connect, to support, to collaborate, and to build a better future for their communities and communities all across the UK, Muslim or not. And I'm so proud for this event to be the first event under the umbrella of the Muslim Councillor Network. So before we begin, I'd like to encourage everybody to join the Labour Muslim Network. You can do that on labourmuslims.org and to join the Muslim Councillor Network as well. You can also do that on labourmuslims.org. And you will have access to a wide variety of benefits and privileges that members do, but also you will connect to thousands of other Muslim members and councillors from across the country. Now, as I promised, I will spend as little time speaking as possible and allow you to hear from your fantastic speakers and our guests today. Up first, we've got Councillor Hosnia Jafari Marbini, who is a councillor for Northfield Brook in Oxford. She's the council migrant champion, and so champions that incredibly pertinent issue across Oxford Council, but also has a profile all across the country, as many of you will have seen her across Twitter and on Facebook and at events and many things to do with the Labour Party, championing migrants as well as communities all across her constituency, her ward, and the country. But another very important issue and why we're so privileged to be joined by Hosnia is she's an NHS worker. So has been at the front line of our current crisis and has been doing so much to both save lives and give back to the community. So she has been juggling being an NHS worker with being a local councillor, as well as contributing to the work of local Black Lives Matter protests and demonstrations and movements. And so she is involved in a lot of things, and we're lucky to have had her time here today. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Hosnia, who can tell her story as a local Muslim councillor. So over to you, Hosnia.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And Ali, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. Very kind, and thank you for setting this up to Labour Muslim Network. And I think it's really crucial to have support from Muslims and from Muslim councillors for each other. Sorry, my son is just. Oh, no. Sorry. Can I just. Ali, could you just take over for 2 minutes, and I'll just. This is my son Omid, and I'll just.
I can absolutely do that, and I'm sure.
Sorry, one sec.
Muslim Network sends our salams to Omid.
Thank you.
For those of you who don't know and haven't watched BBC, this is a very. It reminds me of that really amazing interview at the BBC. But it's also I'm going to speak about this issue of coronavirus and how many of us have had to work from home during this process. So it won't be something that not everybody, pretty much everybody in this call has experienced. At some point, a child or a dog or an adult has interrupted one of your meetings. So I think Hosnia is is
Yeah.
now free from childcare duties and can once again.
Sorry about that, because I've just been at work, and I mean, you know, children just like to have their parents' attention. And anyway, so moving on. So just a little bit about me, I guess. I was nearly 14 I was a few months short of my 14th birthday when we came to the UK. My dad's a political refugee from Iran, and I was thinking a little bit about today about why I got more involved in the Labour Party, why I stood as a councillor, and why, you know, what inspired me. And this Sunday is Muharram, and it's a really huge moment in the Islamic calendar. And in Iran, the streets come alive. Everyone goes out to mourn the loss of Imam Hussein, but also there is a lot of storytelling about celebrating what he stood for, which is fighting for justice and fighting for his beliefs and the social justice that he believes so strongly the Muslim world should have. And it's a really important part of why, for example, my father joined political organizations and movements in Iran, fighting for democracy in Iran, and why he became a political prisoner and spent time in Iran in prison, and then we came here as refugees with him when we were teenagers. So that's all really, those are the things that I think are common to a lot of us, to a lot of our backgrounds, a lot of our stories of what inspired us to join become a councillor, to become more active in our local community. And I really think the Muslim community is really strong in knowing that you can't, resistance is a duty and an obligation, and serving our community is a duty and an obligation. And being collective and working in a collective way, looking after all of our elders, our vulnerable, has always been such a huge part of all Muslim communities that I know and I have the privilege of working with. And it is really, I think that is something that we need to celebrate more, but also we need to know that also gives us the inspiration to really become more active in the grassroots and to fight for what we believe in. So going from there, I'll be honest, I didn't really think, despite all of that, despite my background, I didn't really think that I wasn't a white man. I didn't speak any English really when I came here. I didn't really feel that confident in a lot of the skills that I think councillors should have. But what gave me the confidence, or what inspired me, was I think actually the election of Corbyn, it made it very clear to me that, you know, I had to really, and having a child actually, that you do have to be part of the battle and to create the world that you want to see. And it's not enough really to just, you know, to be upset about things. And it is, I'll be honest, it is a challenge, you know, combining work in the NHS with council work is always tricky. I do think that you have to focus on what you have faith in, what you know is important to you. And a lot of the time that is about advocacy and representing the grassroots. And by that, I mean your members and also your local residents. And then you're just true to yourself really, and true to your faith. And so what can you achieve, and what are the things that I'm really pleased that I've been involved with and I'm really excited about? So I mean, obviously there's lots of sides to being a councillor. There's the kind of advocacy casework, there's getting involved in policy on a local level. There's also the campaigning that a lot of us do. Obviously the NHS, I've worked in the NHS for about 15 years, so that's been a really big part of the campaigning that I do. And fighting for our public services actually, and actually there's a lot of crossover there, because fighting against a hostile environment as a migrant champion, advocating for migrants' rights locally, and that's really where a lot of the battles need to be won, I think, in my opinion. I think a lot of those battles need to be won at that level. Starts really with all of us in local councils. So even solidarity with international struggles, our Oxford Labour Muslim Network and another councillor, Councillor Martin Rush, we worked together, and we, as part of the Oxford Labour Muslim Network, and we managed to get Oxford twinned with Palestine, and we were really proud of that, because I think that international struggles are also part of all of our stories. So it's really, I do think that there's a lot of exciting movements to be a part of. And as a councillor, you're really you're kind of placed really well between your residents and people making policy, but also you can be really involved with the grassroots movements that you see and the issues that you care about. So I would encourage all of you to really get involved. And also, if you do want to become a councillor, just get in touch with someone. Please, you're very welcome to contact me on Facebook or Twitter, and Ali will have my details. You know, just ask someone that you think is friendly and approachable about how to do it, because I didn't know how to do it before I started. You know, people encouraged me and helped me along, and that's what I feel is also my duty to do to the next generation. So we really need to, I think we need to actually give a helping hand to each other, because a lot of the time these environments are very white and male. Black and brown voices are not heard very much, and it can be quite an intimidating environment to work in. But I do think that solidarity that comes actually very easily to Muslims, because we do it on our daily lives. I do think that will really help, and that will give you some confidence that you don't really need, but you think you need to get started on your journey in becoming a counsellor. And I think the reason it is so powerful is we have seen the first 3 doctors who passed away were Muslims, and that is not really a coincidence. A lot of our Black and brown citizens have really suffered through coronavirus. This Tory government are really the Yazids of our time, and to fight against them and to really recognise that they really don't care about the vulnerable, about the migrants, about Black lives is really crucial. And we need to be part of the battle to make sure that they are not implementing policies that are further deteriorating our communities, that are further increasing the injustice that we see on a daily basis. So please do get involved and get in touch with me if you can help at all. And yeah, so salam to everyone. Socialism and solidarity is what it's all about. Take care. And yeah, and get in touch if you need any help. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you so much, Hosnia, for joining us. So we're going to move on next to a councillor, Wasim Zafar, who has been a councillor in Lozells in Birmingham, and is currently, I believe, a cabinet member for transport and the environment in his local council, and has been a CEO of local not-for-profit organizations and has had his community work recognized by a number of awards, including an MBE for services to the voluntary sector. So we're also very, very pleased to have Wasim joining us today, and I'm so excited to hear about your story and your journey and your vision for how Muslims contribute to their local community and inspiring future Muslims as well. So over to you, Wasim.
Thank you, Ali. Good evening and assalamu alaikum to colleagues who are joining this webcast. And thank you to the Labour Muslim Network for giving me the opportunity to share some of my very interesting journey as a councillor here in Birmingham. Here in Lozells, where I was born. In fact, I was born into this very same house that I still live in 21 years later, or slightly a bit more than 21 years, but I've lived here all my life. And this is in the heart of Lozells, the area that I represent. I'm a local boy, attended local school, local primary school, local secondary school, both in my ward. And I think that's kind of the beauty of being able to represent your local neighbourhood. But the journey for me and the Labour Party started very soon after my 15th birthday. That was the earliest you can join the Labour Party. I came from a Labour supporting family who were very active in the local community. They were active in the local mosque. They were active in local politics too. And it seemed a natural thing for me to be involved in that. In fact, I leafleted for the first time at the age of 8. A councillor just lived across the road from me. He offered me some Labour balloons and Labour stickers in exchange to leaflet this road at the age of 8. So I've been involved in the Labour Party from a very, very early age. And I'm not going to say that I was absolutely bought into Labour values at that age, but you can clearly conveys the connection that my family and my community had to local politics. I started to get involved in community activism at university. I played cricket, but was too fat to progress with a career in cricket. So I thought I'd take up cricket coaching. And that's when I came across local young people. I got employed as a sessional worker for the local council whilst at university to coach cricket in the local leisure centre. And I came across young people, we engaged, and I started to get a better understanding of how system was failing young people in my neighbourhood, and how too often politicians wearing ties and sharp suits would talk about young people, yet were not engaged, were not connected, did not understand the challenges, nor the solutions to the challenges faced by young people growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s. So I started to get more active. We some like-minded friends set up a third sector organization. And when I graduated from university, I thought I'll park my transport and logistical career to one side and go and help out at this organization. And I very soon got employed. And by the age of 23, I was managing a large team of full-time, part-time and sessional workers, helping make a difference in our community. And then I continued to get politically active. And in 2011, very soon, just before that, I became a magistrate too. So I was one of the youngest magistrates in Birmingham and in the wider West Midlands area. And then a selection came along, and I was selected to be the Labour candidate. And there were young people on that particular campaign who were leafleting the streets of Lozells, who were knocking doors, who were making calls, who never voted before. And some of them were not voting age. So it was just, they felt a sense of connection that someone relatively young was representing them or seeking to represent them, and they got fully engaged. And I'd like to think that to this day, we continue to engage with those young people and help them find solutions, but they also hold me to account. So representing Lozells and East Handsworth has been challenging. I've had ups and downs in my political career. It's not been easy. It's been hugely challenging at times when, particularly the right-wing press have come after me. Being a Muslim in public life and being a Muslim as a councillor and a cabinet member in the largest local authority in Western Europe does come with its challenges. So there's been issues. So there's been issues in terms of some of the challenges I've had from the far right. Here at this house that I'm staying at, I've had Tommy Robinson, Jada Francis and Goulding lead a demonstration outside my personal house. And for me, it's a challenge, but the impact that's had on my family has also been concerning. And people on this call would think, you've had all these challenges, you've had loads of online trolling, you've had the three biggest far right leaders on your doorstep. Clearly you've done something to upset them. But why would you continue to stay in public office? And I think that is the real question here. And the beauty of representing your neighborhood, the beauty of being able to go into your primary school, not just as a local governor, but being able to give back to them, giving back to the institutions that have given me so much, being able to go into my secondary school and sit down with the head teacher who used to be my maths teacher and help them get more resources to offer a better level of education, to unlock doors for them, to enable and facilitate for them to deliver better services. There's nothing more rewarding than that. I also serve as a non-executive director at the local NHS trust, the trust I was born in, the trust where my son was born in, the same trust where my father passed away in. So being able to contribute to local services in your neighborhood and shape them and work with communities to co-design and co-produce services there's no better feeling than that. And then to have such an important and challenging role in the cabinet, transport and environment, which includes all the stuff around clean air. So I'm introducing, I'm the policy lead for the clean air zone that's coming to Birmingham, which is very controversial project. I'm leading on climate change as the chair of the Birmingham Climate Change Task Force. Our highways budget is probably the biggest highways budget in any local authority in this country, and it's so with these with this responsibility comes its challenges. But being able to shape services and shape the way that your city looks, I was reflecting, and I think self-reflection is really important. I'm not going to be a cabinet member all my life. I'm not going to be a councillor all my life. These things are time limited. But I will look back at this time of my life and think I was able to change my neighborhood. I was able to change my city and play a very small role in this huge city and play a small role in this neighborhood. But, it's something I will look back with pride, and something that, I hope my children and my grandchildren in the future look back and think, you know what, he was part of you know, the DNA of this neighborhood, or the, you know, he was able to do something that was quite positive and contributed to that positivity. So I'd really encourage people to get involved in public life. It's not easy. Let's not fool around. But if you want to see change, if you want to see improvements, you know, this is, my ward's got the lowest male life expectancy in the city. So, you know, if you've got underlying health issues like I have as a type 2 diabetic, you're in serious trouble in a place like this. And that's why we have to improve the services and improve the environment and reverse those health inequalities in neighbourhoods like this. And you can do that as a council. You can enable and facilitate and lead your community to be able to do that. We've got the highest youth unemployment in my ward, you know, and I'm constantly trying to work with colleges and universities and schools to see how we can better equip our young people to challenge to address those particular issues. So you can play a very hands-on role. And in conclusion, you know, you need to have a peer network. You need to have people to support you. I think Councillor Mohammed Afzal, Lord Mayor-elect for Birmingham's on this call. Councillor Afzal's been a neighbouring councillor. In fact, he's been a councillor since '82. I was born in '81, so I've just given my real age away. But it's people like Councillor Afzal who've been very, very supportive over the years, and I think that's part of our legacy. And what our colleague just said, it's part of our responsibility to equip and empower the next generation of leaders and encourage them and support them and mentor them, whether it's formal or informal mentoring. It's really, really important we play our role. And if anybody needs any help, any guidance, I'll be more than happy to assist. I look forward to the questions, and thank you again for the opportunity to share some aspects of my journey.
Thank you, Wasim, and you are doing a very good job in Birmingham.
Thank you, and there's your ringing endorsement, Wasim. We really
Definitely
appreciate you joining us today and sharing your experiences, and we'll hear from you more in a little bit. We have next. I'm really excited to hear from a real trailblazer across the country. The first Somali-born mayor in the UK, I believe. The first hijab-wearing mayor, I believe, in the UK. A councillor for Holloway Road, and the mayor of Islington, Councillor Rakia Ismail. So over to you, Councillor Ismail. You're just on mute, so if you're...
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ali, for the introduction. Absolutely, thank you so much. I'd like to actually say a little thing before I go into detail, that I'm the first female Somali councillor, but there were others who were councillors male before, so that's the bit I could just add. I don't know where to begin. I've got a bit story like Husna, because I became a refugee actually in my own country, in Somaliland, many, many years ago. I was under the age of 10 because my dad and my family were very much involved in politics. And then I became a refugee at a very young age in the UAE, and that's where I grew up and went to school. Many years later, I came to England, and I was studying here in England. I went to Fashion and Arts College. After Fashion and Art College and also SHU College, I have started working with local people, local communities, and start setting up projects for women, particularly from my background, and to teach them art and design, and just for them to come out of the house was a key important for me, because when I was at university, I didn't think actually people will have difficulties, but when I finished university, it's actually where 10 days after I finished university, I had my first daughter. And within that, I decided to sort of like work at local level, local communities, and went to my local under 5 center, bring more women together. So there's more integration amongst, women and ethnic minority. That's how I started, and I moved on, still working with local schools, and became a community activist through that, and then start setting up projects for young people, art projects. And from there, really, my community activism developed through to politics. And after some time, I got really frustrated, and I was really annoyed because politicians will tell me one thing, and I would be asking consistently questions why certain things are not being delivered for ethnic minority. And that was really a hard struggle. And through that, I decided to set up homework projects for local people, particularly young children. And I went to my local, community hall, and everyone sitting there is white. And when I went there, everybody's just looking at me as if I'm from planet Mars. And all I'm asking is like, which days can we have the hall so we can be part of this community? That took some challenging moments, but the end result was that we became very friendly, and they were very accommodating. They were not really, I wouldn't say there was discrimination, but whether these people didn't know me, who I was, or what I'm talking about. So it's, as a Muslim woman, for me, it's my responsibility to make people at ease, so they understand me, so I understand them, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. And it's difficult if you just shut your door and do not integrate. I didn't say assimilate, but do not integrate. I think that's a huge challenge for the next generation of Muslim youth, and it's important. And from there, I have set, again, girls project, fashion project. And from there, I have been asked, would you be interested to become a counselor? And I'm thinking, like, what are you talking about? Because for me, that's not something I really was set to do. And that's not something I was interested in because of politics back home with my family. And as a matter of fact, my younger brother got killed through politics. So for me, politics was like really a foreign language. But somehow I decided to become a local politician and realize, actually, I can change people's life. I can contribute a little. And the beauty is, for me particularly, when I became a councillor, I became councillor 2012 by election. What I realized is that many young Somalis have also opened up and decided to join the Labour Party and other parties. And I think that's important because, as a Muslim woman, there are issues that is within the Muslim community that need to be addressed. Young people need their rights to be addressed. So for me, the key was that it's not that I wanted 100% to be in politics, but to make sure that people have voice and their voice are heard. And when consultations and policy are being made, that they are incorporated, because often what used to happen is there are this community who lives this area, but nobody is counting for them. And that is really, really very hard. And as a Muslim woman, I decided then I wanted to involve more and more young women into politics. Not necessarily they have to be politicians, but they can have a say in policy making, in consultations, and become a member of a party, because at the end of the day, the way the street is, the way the community hall is, how things are designed and made, it all comes into play of politics. And what I understand and also explain to people is like, you can't say you don't want to be involved in politics, because you have a right to be involved. You don't need to be a politician, but you have a say, and that say will really make a difference for the next generation and for yourself. And I think that's a really key important. Of course, as Wasim said, there are challenges and there are sacrifices to be made to be fair. And when you think the bigger picture is more important than the sacrifices you make, because when I go down in Islington, some parts of Islington, or even in Islington High Street, you know, lots of people say to me, oh, thank you, you've really helped me, or thank you, I think it's important that you are in politics. And I hope and I wish that more and more female and male politicians of Muslim origin should join, because you know there's so much great things to say about politics, and of course there's so many sides, to be fair, on politics, but the beauty is we need to be participating, we need to be involved. I mean, of course we have 400 over just 400 Muslim councillors in Britain, and I just think I don't know, maybe I'm quite ambitious, I have no idea, but I think that's very little. We need more Muslim. I mean, if you break down this into the Muslim, because this issue of Black ethnic minority, you know, inclusive being Muslim, to me, this is a drop in the ocean. What we need is, you know, and I'm not really, to be honest, I don't like this idea of Black ethnic minority, that you just all bundle in one and put it there. I mean, I don't represent every Black ethnic minority. All of us do not represent, so we need to have a proper proportion of representation, particularly when it comes to Muslims, when it comes to Black ethnic minority. Sometimes if this percent of like 7% of the UK population, of Muslim population, is Muslim, that 7% is, if you break it down, where the Arabs, where the Asians, where the Africans are Muslims, I mean, this will be absolutely, in my opinion, nothing. And I think the Labour Party needs to open up and really get to the truth and really have more Muslim councillors, more Black ethnic minority councillors, because at the end of the day is that the people who are going to vote for us and who have been voting for us, and the Labour Party has been counting on time and again, is Black ethnic minority, is the Muslim community. But we are not represented enough. And then what happens is, when it comes to selection time, I hope I'm not going too far, but when it comes to selection time, I know many ethnic minority, I know many Muslims have not been selected, but 9 out of 10, it's their vote that's going to make the difference. I know Iram is sitting there and she's trying very hard, and many other Muslim female are trying very hard, whether it's the NAC, whether it's a Labour Women Network, whether it's you know, being your local council, to represent your local area. We need, as a Muslim woman, personally, I feel we need to have better, more representation. And of course, being a Muslim and being a Black ethnic minority, really, you know, we do not want to be just the tick box, because often what happens is you get tick box. They are neither for your community, our community, or anyone. And to be honest, you might think I'm being very sort of like brutal, but I think politics is, and we need to have more, because I have been campaigning on knife crime and in the last 2 years, and 9 out of 10, it's young Muslims and Black ethnic minority at the end of the blade. What is politicians, mainstream politicians, are doing about it? The campaign I ran was, I don't know if any one of you come across, it was on Observer, on The Guardian, BBC Trisha, Victoria Derbyshire. And, you know, we need to campaign, and sometimes it's so difficult being politician when you see something so acute in your own backyard that people are suffering and you have to go through the party line. Sometimes you need to say, well, enough is enough. My community, our Muslim community is suffering knife crime, Islamophobia, and we want the party to come out and support us. I think that's all I can add. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councillor Ismail, for that passionate rallying call. Many people will know that I that was an issue particularly close to my heart, which was around the representation, specifically some of the challenges Muslims face around selections. You know, it's not just in local elections or in national elections, it happens everywhere. I remember I was, as most folks will know, I was the Labour Party candidate against Boris Johnson in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. And when I was a candidate, I remember when the first 100 local parliamentary candidates were selected, out of 100, 6 of us were non-white. So that's from the Global South, only 6. And that's not saying Muslim, that's not saying 6 Black women. This was 6, for lack of a better term, BAME candidates out of all the 100. So there's no doubt that more needs to be done. And that starts with organizations like ours in giving people the tools, the inspiring them to run. And that brings me on very, very swiftly onto Councillor Mete Koban, who is a councillor for Stoke Newington. He's the CEO of My Life, My Say, which I'm sure everyone will have heard of, and has won multiple awards, including an MBE for his services to young people. I'm really pleased that Councillor Koban could join us today, largely because I know when we talk about elected office, public office, whether it's councillors, whether it's members of parliament, there is a tendency to speak about, to not include young people within that discussion. But I've always held the belief that if you're passionate enough, you're old enough. If you have enough ideas, you're old enough. And you know, your life experience can far outweigh your age, and that the Labour Party, politics in general, desperately needs more young voices and more young blood within it. And I know that's something you're really, really passionate about. So over to you, Councillor Koban.
Thank you, Ali, for the very kind introduction. And I think you've done my speech on behalf of me. It's great to hear about all the inspiring stories of Rakia, Wasim and Hosnia. I think what you all are doing in your communities is really inspiring, and it's a real pleasure to be here among you all, really, to talk about a bit about my experiences. I think, Ali, you touched upon you know, the importance of young people being engaged in politics and being involved in decision making, and that's sort of right at the core of what I do and where I come from. And I guess I'll tell you a bit about my background. I'm from a place called Northern Cyprus. Some of you will have heard of Cyprus. Northern Cyprus is not a recognized country. So when I first came to this country, I was an undocumented child where the Home Office couldn't recognize or verify my details because I'm born in a country that is not recognized as a country other than from Turkey. When we first came here, we moved to Hackney, where I'm from and where I represent, in Stoke Newington. And Hackney, for those of you who don't know, you should definitely visit. It's definitely the best place to visit in London. And then Islington follows us. But Hackney is a very diverse borough, so we immediately felt welcomed because it's otherwise known as the world in one borough. But there were also some deep problems that we identified immediately when we came. You know, we had one of the highest rates of crime in the country. More than a third of the children living in poverty. And the schools were so bad, and more than half the school was shut between 1997 and 2003. So I was actually one of the 62% of 11-year-old pupils who couldn't even go to school in my borough because all the schools were shut down between that time period, and the government had to step in and rebuild schools, but that was after my time. It was even so bad that it was ranked, I believe, as the worst place to live out of 434 local authorities in the UK. But then when you fast forward, you know, to where we are now in 14 years later, the transformation really has been unthinkable. So when you think about Hackney now, it's now known as the hipster part of London. It's London's home of the tech hub. So where I am sitting right now is in Olympic Park, and it's, you know, part of the tech city, what they call in Shoreditch and in Hackney Wick. And it's also London's nightlife too. And we even achieved some of the best secondary school exam results in 2017. But for me, what was really, and the reason why I stood to be a councillor was because, you know, whilst it's great that Hackney was going through this major transformation and there was loads of job opportunities that were being created, we had amazing new property developments going up. You know, there's a real problem in London, and I know some of you will know this, about, you know, gentrification and people being priced out of their homes. So the real question is, yeah, you have growth, but growth for who? And what does that growth look like? Does it work for the locals, or are we just sort of growing for people to move into to our borough? And that for me was at the core and at the heart of why I stood to be a councillor. I'm brought up on a council estate. My father is a cab driver. My mother is a care worker. And I often, as a young child, I often felt, you know, neglected. I often felt powerless. I often felt like no one really listened to the voices of people like me. So I thought, you know what, sod it, I might as well stand up. There's no point of, you know, complaining about these things forever and ever. I had joined the Labour Party as a young child. I was 14. Don't ask what I was doing, why I joined the Labour Party when I was 14. I remember going to my first meeting. There was probably 3 or 4 people there. And I was 14, and I remember we spent the first half an hour debating whether the meeting was quorum, and then the next half an hour about whether they agreed on the minutes. And the average age of the room was about 80, that's including me. So that was my very first experience of the Labour Party. And I remember not going back to a Labour Party meeting for another 3 or 4 years because of how daunting that experience was. But when the opportunities came, you know, I was always involved in my local community, you know, both in my local mosque. I was involved with lots of different organisations locally too. So it made sense that I put myself forward to be a candidate. And obviously that process was very difficult in many ways, very difficult and challenging for someone like me who, you know, at the time I was only 19 going on to 20, and I was contesting a seat that was a safe seat. So, you know, at the time there was lots of people who were encouraging me to stand in the wards where we probably wouldn't have won, but it would have been a great campaign experience for me. And I know that's something that, you know, talking about elections, I know a lot of ethnic minorities are sort of pushed into that space whenever you're thinking to stand for either parliamentary seats or council seats. You know, you're often told by people, well, maybe you should do it as an experience first, and then you can then go on, and there's no guarantee for that really. So I stood to be a candidate. And, you know, one of the things that I done, Ali, which is exactly what you said, is, you know, the average age of a councillor in the UK at the time when I stood was 66. And I really passionately argued, and the need for having young councillors, someone who actually looks and sounds like people who that we're seeking to represent. And I think that's, you know, if you want to have a healthy democracy, you need to have people who look and sound like the communities they seek to represent. So when I stood to be a candidate in Stoke Newington, at the time we had about 600 members, and this was pre-Corbyn, so we still had a very huge membership in my ward. The ward membership in my ward right now is about, I think it's just over 1,000, tells you the size of my ward. It's as big as a CLP in parts of different countries. And one of the things that I done was I mobilized a lot of young people, a lot of young members who for the first time had been contacted by someone when I reached out to them. And they all turned out to vote. And, you know, that was sort of the process kind of followed from that. But, you know, I think it's extremely important that, you know, we live in a, you know, Rakia has already spoken about this, you know, we live in a democracy where we have to have lots of different groups represented in society. And I think, you know, it's so important that when we're looking at some of the biggest challenges that we're facing, especially now when you look at how COVID-19 has exposed and amplified a lot of inequalities in our society, you look at how BME communities have been affected, both in terms of, you know, actually dying and also in terms of like losing their jobs and, you know, like their livelihoods as well. So I think it's very important that we have lots of different groups that are represented in our society. And one other quick experience that I will mention before we go into the discussion is I had the honour and the privilege to work for the Mayor of London, for Sadiq Khan, when he first put himself forward as a candidate to be Mayor of London. And I remember that process. It was very, very interesting. And I think one day it will be great, actually. I'm sure you will all hear from himself when he talks about the process of him running to be a candidate. But it was very, very difficult. And I remember so many people including Muslims, by the way, not just non-Muslims, but a lot of Muslims actually saying that, you know, that actually didn't come out to support Sadiq when he first stood for mayor. And also, they also felt like it was very impossible for someone who was Muslim to be the mayor of London. And, you know, we relentlessly campaigned. I think we went to over 200, you know, mosques, churches, you know, synagogues, to community organizations in the space of 3 months. And we done the unthinkable. You know, we beat someone who had, at the time, you know, who's a very formidable campaigner. Unfortunately, she's not with us here today, Tessa Jao, who's sadly passed away over a year ago. But, you know, Tessa had a really good campaign. She was, you know, she had a big profile. She had obviously launched a campaign from over a year ago, and we came into it in the last 3 months, just after the 2015 general elections. And we turned it around and we won it. And, you know, today, obviously, we have the Mayor of London, who happens to be Muslim. And I think for me, you know, that's had a huge impact, even on myself. You know, like when you visibly look at me or by my name, you ordinarily probably wouldn't be able to tell that I'm Muslim. But, you know, I remember, like, after Sadiq had been elected, lots of people, even my council colleagues, now come up to me and say to me, "Oh, are you going to Friday prayer?" Or, you know, it's the little differences that you probably wouldn't have comfortably been able to kind of talk to them, just because it's just exhausting explaining the process. So I do think that, you know, representation, ultimately, the way we're going to make a change is exactly to Rakia's point, is that we need to be absolutely aspirational and ambitious in terms of the number of Muslims that are represented in public life. And it doesn't just have to be as politicians, but it's also about equipping our citizens to make sure that they're aware of their rights and they know how to lobby their politicians to make a difference too. So I think it's definitely made a huge difference, and very glad to be part of this conversation and look forward to being part of it.
Thank you so much, Mate. And I'm sure a lot of people have been inspired by what you've said, what Wasim has said, what Rakia has said, what Hasnia has said today. Not least, I can share with you, we've had a couple of comments both in the chat, in this call on Facebook and on the website. The first one being that I'm going to paraphrase, I'm going to use one person's comment as paraphrasing the spirit of what a lot of people are saying, in that everybody is saying kind of unanimously how proud they are of all four of our speakers, who in your own way are breaking glass ceilings and are contributing to your communities as well as communities around the country. So thank you guys all for your contributions and everything that you do within your communities. One thing that's coming up in the chat from quite a few folks is that starting point of running. And I know it was a challenge for me, and pretty much everyone has mentioned, you know, getting yourself over the idea that you know, that public office is a place for you, and you know, being a councillor is a place for you, can be quite challenging for anyone who's constantly told that it's not. So what, you know, small one piece of advice would you give someone who thinks that they have something to contribute, but kind of is in the mindset that these places aren't really for them? Hosni, if I start with you, because I know you have to leave us very, very soon, but it would be great to hear from you guys about what got you over that hump.
Thank you. That's a really good question, and I think it's a tough one, but I think it really comes down to building relationships with people, just your neighbours, the residents, you know, the people that you know in the community, because that's probably the biggest thing, is just having, over time, working together on whatever project it is. If, like, during the pandemic, if you've been providing, and if your mosque has been providing food for migrant communities, if you've been, whatever thing that might seem small, that relationship building between you and residents and members is probably what really helps you. Then, you know, then you will get that inspiration, and you will also get that support from those individuals. And I would say that there is a really important role in, if there are Muslim or Black or Brown supportive members of your CLP that you know who share some of the passions that you share. For me, politics is about policies and about issues, basically. So it's about changing policies to change lives and inequity. So I would get involved and speak to the people that you think, oh yeah, they care about the same things that I care about. I want to hear more from them. I would just approach them and I would try and make some contact with them, and hopefully they'll be welcoming, and they will then encourage you to maybe think about standing. That is probably one of the most important things. And you'll be surprised how many members, for example, in CLPs, so in my own selection, how many CLP members are never really, they don't come to meetings because they don't feel that inspired by the people they meet. They think that politics is the same, that politics doesn't get you anywhere. So I think I would also just encourage you to speak to people who you wouldn't normally speak to, or who you think are not that interested, because often those are the members that you can reach out to. And as so many people have said so eloquently, often young people who don't really, who dismiss, people that are marginalized within these environments. I think it's really important to speak to those people, because I think often you'll see that they actually do want to, they want someone to listen, they want to have that connection with someone, and they do want to get behind really fighting for the things they care about. It's just that no one's really ever spoken to them or asked them about it. So I would just say, yeah, just I think just start off by just speaking to the people in your community, and just on whatever you think. And often you think it's a small thing, or what you've done is not that significant, but honestly, a lot of I'll be honest here, like a lot of the privately educated politicians and commentators that we see all the time, I'll be honest, they're very good at bluffing, and they're very good at making themselves sound great. But really, if you go down to the detail, a lot of times, actually, a lot of the hard work is done by other people. So, which is not a tactic I would encourage anyone to do. But I'm just trying to say that all of you, I'm sure, have lots and lots to contribute. And I'm sure you've actually been a great member of your community already. So I wouldn't underestimate the achievements you have, but also I would think about the social justice issues that you really care about, because that's what politics is about, really, for me. Sorry, I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asneha. And you would have seen a few of us smiling at your point around how a lot of the traditional political class pretend like they know everything and are perfectly qualified and have all the answers, when we in fact know the opposite. And I have found myself that the very best experience, credentials, CV that you can have in public life is being a real person. So having struggled the same way your community has, the best experience you have, you don't need to have been the director of a hedge fund. Your experience is being in the community, is seeing the faces of your community and speaking to people within your community. I absolutely agree with you. Wasim, if we come to you next, so same sort of question, what got you over the hump of, is this really for me? Is politics really for me? Will I be accepted? And getting over that initial barrier of standing.
Thanks, Ali. So two things. One, you really have to have the intentions to serve your community. I think too often, or not too often, but sometimes people come into politics for the wrong reasons. And my intentions were very, very clear. I wanted to improve my quality of life. I wanted to improve the quality of life of my family and of my neighborhood. And those were, I was very focused on those intentions. And I felt that I could do a better job than the people that were in office at that particular time. And that's why I was seeking office. And the second thing is, you've got to be prepared to fight the battles. I could write a book just on my first selection, and the barriers I faced. And I faced barriers from the party. I faced barriers from people who wanted to keep the status quo. And I faced barriers from the Muslim community. Let's be absolutely frank about that. And there was real challenges about, the generation before us who passing the baton on to the next generation, and how that happens. And maybe my approach may have been too aggressive at that particular time, but I was very focused, and I wanted to fight the battles. And the inequalities that we will face, and you will face as potential candidates, will be huge. Will be huge within the party, will be huge within the community, will be huge within the Muslim community. But if your intentions are right, and you want to serve the people, be prepared to fight the battles. At each time I faced a barrier, I just wanted to run straight through it. I was incredibly focused. I probably couldn't fight that sort of battle today, thinking about think about it and the energy I had back then. But one thing with me is each time somebody puts up a barrier, I want to win. I'm a winner and I want to win for my community. So I think staying focused and fighting those battles is really important.
Thank you, Wasim. And I completely agree with you about making sure you come in for the right reasons. Councillor Rakia, if we come to you next, what inspired you to run? Was there a moment in which things changed and you thought, no, I can be a councillor, no, I can be the first Somali-born woman mayor in the UK, first hijabi woman mayor of the UK? I could keep listing them, but I'll stop there. But was there a moment for you?
Well, there wasn't really a moment, to be honest. I first wanted to stand 2010, and I was a little bit worried. It wasn't because I was worried that people would not select me and elect me. I was just worried that I'm a mom of 4. My children were very young, and I was worried that I might not do really a good job. And prior to that, to be honest, what really crossed me the road is the experience that I had, because at first I became a councillor by election. And when you become by-election, when you run for by-election seat, really you don't have much of choice because it's not your home seat. It wasn't my home seat. It was another seat. And I was contesting really people who every month attend their ward meetings. They were well known. But what crossed me the barrier was that I was, working in schools, community activists, as I said before, part of the Tenant Resident Association. So all the experience I've had really crossed me. And before that, also, I was a school governor. So if anyone wants to stand, I think it's the most important part is you need to know what's happening, local issues, whether it's in your local ward or in another ward. Holistically, of course, you need to know what's happening in your borough, but more importantly, in your backyard, you need to know. You need to attend Tenant Resident Association meetings. I know often I say that, and a lot of people say to me, what does that mean? But a lot of decisions happens there, and you learn about what are the issues in the ward, what are the issues that the council has, and I think it's important. Another key important is you really to become a school governor. A school governor is a really very important role, and it also helps not just the school but also other parents to come forward, because that is the education of your children. And you have a say. I think it's important. A number of other issues that you need to know, young people, what they want, what are the issues in schools, because I have lived in Islington almost like 28 years now. And in Islington, I have worked most of my life in Islington, attend colleges in Islington. And if you are known, and also if you are very firm, but very fair at the same time, people trust in you. It doesn't matter who it is, but also, you encourage people. I mean, I remember many sort of like non-Muslims, I've encouraged them to become councillors. So you need to be very open-hearted, have a very open-hearted, and you need to welcome people. But of course, you don't accept if you have an issues of discrimination, but you just have to be very honest. And also on top of that, you have neighbors, and you need to be, on your right and left neighbors as a Muslim, you need to be very welcoming. I mean, when I move into the area I'm living now, I've had so much challenges from my neighbors and God knows what. But at the end of the day, it's the unknowing that people are sometimes quite difficult. But once people get to know you, that you mean well, then that's fine. And I think anybody who wants to become a councillor or going to a political office, of course, become a member of a party, of course, attend the ward meetings, because that's really important, because the people who's going to 9 out of 10 selecting you are those people who are going to be attending the ward meetings, and they need to know about you, about what you think, about you know, politics in the UK, local issues. I think that's the key. It would be very difficult, anybody says that they want to become a councillor in today, and then they will be selected and elected because, you know, competition is got tighter than before. So you need to know your local issues at the back of your head before you actually set in, say you want to be a politician, local politician. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rakia, for that. And again, all of the points everybody is raising today is really hitting home for me, and I'm sure everyone watching. Mete, I'm going to come to you next. You said something particularly interesting to me around how when you walked into your CLP, it was challenging in that, you know, the first half an hour was spent talking about whether you were quora, and the second half an hour on the minutes. That seems to be quite conservative numbers compared to CLP meetings that I've been to, but it's the same for me. I mean, I remember we have a university in my constituency, and we decided to take a group of the Labour members who were at the university to the CLP meeting, and after, like you said, 30 minutes of quoracy and 30 minutes of minutes, and then another 30 minutes about rule book point 1, point 3, point 8 being discussed. They left there quite unhappy with me for taking them there and never returning. So I'm going to slightly switch the question for you, because I think you have a really important contribution in this area. How can we open up these spaces, do you think, to get not just more young people involved, more Muslims involved, and get people from the position where, look, they're passionate, they have ideas, they know their community, into local office? Because it seems that that's the bridge that people are struggling to get over. So how can the Labour Party and local Labour parties make these spaces more accessible, more enjoyable and inspiring for people?
I think, Ali, that's a very, very good question. And sorry, by the way, I've switched devices just because my laptop stopped working. But yeah, look, I mean, that's a brilliant question. And I think the way to do that is, often when we create spaces, we often make this assumption, and I have to grapple with this at work for My Life, My Say too, where, you know, we create this space called My Life, My Say, or whatever it is, the Labour Party, and we expect people to come to us. I think the more sort of effective approach is really to identify where people go to in their social, digital and day-to-day lives, and think about how we can connect with them in those spaces. So an example I give you is something we do through My Life, My Say, is we have a concept called the Democracy Cafe. And Democracy Cafes is our reinvigoration of the 17th century concept of talking about politics over coffee. But the way we do it is try to sort of, remove the idea that, you have to have a suit on to talk about politics, or you have to go to like a formal institution to talk about politics. So we typically, we have a partnership with Starbucks. That's just because, a lot of young people happen to go to Starbucks. And the idea is you talk about politics over Frappuccino. So it's really trying to make it more of a conversation, because what we do know is that young people and people generally, of course, they care about issues, and of course they care about whether they've got a decent roof over their shoulders, or whether they've got a job that pays them basic respect and dignity. The issue is whether they see traditional forms of politics as a vehicle to address the issues that they care about. And there are many reasons why they don't. And, some of it has been touched upon, but, obviously representation is one, when you look at people who don't look and sound like you. Secondly, it could be because obviously we're not educated about how democracy works in this country, and how you make change and how you lobby. And the third thing is obviously because there's a lack of trust between politicians and people. So I think what we need to do is just be a bit more innovative about, rather than trying to constantly bring people to us. And partly the reason why those Labour Party meetings that we spoke about don't work is because it suits a very old and particular style, and it doesn't tailor to the needs and the changing needs of the newer demographic, the next generation. So I think what we need to do, and this is, I try to do this as much as I can in my capacity as a councillor, is really being a bit more innovative in our ways in which we engage with our residents. But then, of course, you can apply that to within membership as well. So I think we just need to think outside the box and go to people rather than expecting them. And then the other thing is obviously is who you go to them with. So often, sometimes, I think sometimes we have to put away our own ego and actually sometimes realize and recognize, who are the best place to sort of go and lead those conversations. So for example, if you take me to where Wasim's from in Birmingham and get me to engage with young people there, even though I'm young, I'm not the best placed person to go and do that because, again, there's a barrier between my accent. So it's much better that you have someone from a local person from Birmingham leading those conversations. So I think sometimes we just have to be recognize, who is best placed to kind of lead on those conversations and how we hold those conversations. But just on the previous question, I just had 3 questions that I wanted to kind of bounce back to as a response. For me, if you're standing or if you're looking to stand in politics, there are 3 questions that you ultimately need to ask yourself. The first is, do you really want to change the world? I think that's really important. The second is, why are you the best person to stand as a candidate? And I think it's really important that you have to be able to answer that to yourself. And the third thing is, rather than thinking, oh, can I stand or can I get selected or am I good enough? The question, just flip it around and say, why can't I be a councillor? And if you literally write down, if you can't come up with a list of suggestions about why you can't be a councillor, then you should go to be a councillor. So I think we just have to change our mindset a little bit, and rather than thinking, am I good enough? It's more about why can't I? And I think that will make a big difference in terms of your mindset.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with you. And it's that, for me, that wanting to change the world and that desire to bringing about change. And this doesn't have to be, changing the world for someone isn't necessarily about, changing national government policy. All of us as councillors will know rehoming one family, providing support to one family on issues of housing or schools or anything like that can change their world and can change the world for that single family. And for them, that's as good as the Prime Minister changing laws or a Labour Party government changing national laws. That for them is as powerful. Listen, we could go on all day discussing some of these really, really critical issues, but one thing we wanted to highlight today was some of these stories and inspire people to get more involved in local government. Because like Rakia said, we have over about 400 Labour Muslim MPs, Labour Muslim councillors, not Labour Muslim MPs, Labour Muslim councillors all across the country, and we want to inspire anyone within their community to contribute if they feel like they can, and to know that if you feel you have the ideas and the passion to change your community, you absolutely have a role to play. You absolutely have a part to play in the Labour Party, and you should stand. So for everyone on this call, watching on Facebook, watching on the website, within the call, make sure to join the Labour Muslim Network. You can do that on labourmuslims.org. You can join the Councillors Network. All the councillors will get an email about the Councillors Network in the coming days, and you can join then. And we can keep this lively discussion going and connect you no matter where you are from the UK. You can be connected to support, to develop, and to collaborate with one another. Once again, I just want to say a huge thank you to our inspiring panelists. I know we've got local elections coming up soon, and I think you've re-inspired me to go out there to knock on doors, maybe virtually, maybe in person. Who knows what the future holds? But you are all so inspiring and doing great work. So thank you to Councillor Zafar, to Councillor Ismail, to Councillor Coben, to Councillor Jafari Marbini, who joined us today. I'm sure you have inspired so many more people to stand. I've been nodding my head so much that I'm getting neck pains. So thank you for everything that you're doing and for contributing to this event once again. So we hope you can join us for future events. Our next event is, we've got a webinar on public speaking that's free for all our members. So this will take you through the do's and don'ts and the basics of public speaking. If you want to pick up some of the skills and you want to stand, then we're keen to provide you with those skills and provide you with that experience that sometimes doesn't leave the walls of private schools. So we want to make sure that we give you all those tools as well. So if you want, you can register for that on the website as well. But once again, may Allah bless all of your work, to all of our speakers and all of our councillors. May He, may we be blessed to continue to contribute to our communities, not just to the Muslim community, but communities all across Britain, within our constituencies and beyond. And I hope everyone is safe and happy, and their families are safe and happy, and their friends are safe and happy. And I hope to join you at the next event. So, assalamu alaikum, everyone.